Shalom. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Barachar Kodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS who have taught us this word and teach us this word today. And I want to give a salutation unto the elect of the nation of Israel. This is the brother Yatazak Bob at the GMS Nebraska camp. This is GMS Endeavor. And in this lesson, what I want to get into is this latest news within the within what Trump has been doing in regards to these deportations and coming after the so-called immigrants. And really what Trump is doing, he's coming after the nation of Israel primarily. This is what we've seen in the news recently is Trump coming after the northern kingdom of the nation of Israel. Which the true Israelites are the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. You have the southern kingdom and you have the northern kingdom. The southern kingdom are, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Judah being the Negroes, Benjamin being the West Indians or the Jamaicans, Levi being the Haitians. And then you have the northern kingdom, which are the Latino and Native tribes, such as Gad, North American Indians, Issachar, the Mexicans, Asher, Colombia to Uruguay, and so on and so forth. Trump had been primarily going after, Mexicans, but also Cubans, Venezuelans, Puerto Ricans, and deporting them, and he, it's in line with what we read about in Isaiah chapter 19, verse 4, where it says, and the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, said the Lord Yahweh of hosts. America is spiritually Egypt. It spiritually embodies Egypt, Sodom, Babylon, different past empires in one way or another. But, America spiritually embodies Egypt because, ancient Egypt was the house of bondage for the nation of Israel. This place America, is the same. It's a house of bondage. It's where we served hardcore slavery, and so, this place spiritually embodies Egypt. So it says the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord. The way that Trump has been moving since he's came into office, he is embodying, the cruel Lord described in this prophecy. He's been sending people away with no due process. He's been, talking about sending people to El Salvadorian prisons and just coming down heavy, especially upon the nation of Israel. And as we get into these articles, it's going to become more and more apparent how Trump is embodying this cruel Lord that it speaks of, and as well as the unjust judgment that he's coming after our nation within these, deportations, because what we have to understand is that the only immigrants in the Issacharites and the different Israelite tribes ain't the only immigrants in this country. There's Edomite immigrants in this country, and Trump ain't coming after them with the same energy. He's not coming down on them the same. So it's showing that this is a targeted thing, and it's showing the unjust judgment, and that is being perpetuated, But at the end of the day, it's the perpetual hatred that Esau has for Jacob, So without further ado, let's go on and get into the article. It says, the department, this is from usnews.com. It says the Department of Homeland Security said Friday that it is terminating legal protections for hundreds of thousands of Haitians, setting them up for potential deportation. Now, like I said, this is following, what was, majorly in the news with, the protests, resulting from the major sweep of, ICE raids and deportations on, the Issacharites and the Northern Kingdom. And as that's going on, Trump is doubling down on the Southern Kingdom, going after the Haitians or the Levites, where he's, terminating their legal protections. Now, when we read on, it says DHS said that conditions in Haiti have improved and Haitians no longer meet the conditions for the temporary legal protections. But this is showing the unjust judgment that Esau is coming down on, and showing how he's, lying, because it's saying that, the reason why Haitians were here under legal protection is because they had temporary protection status, you know, coming into the country because it was deemed that Haiti was too dangerous to live in. There was too much crime. There's too much going on there, so they were able to be protected here in America. Now they're saying that Haiti has improved, and Haitians, you know, have to go back because conditions have improved. But let's jump down in this article real fast because, you know, out the same mouth, it says, you know, the Department of State nonetheless has not changed its travel advisory and still recommends Americans do not travel to Haiti due to kidnapping, crime, civil unrest, and limited health care. So which one is it? Because they're saying, okay, Haiti's cool enough. Y'all can go back home now. Y'all don't get out of here. You don't need to be here no more. But at the same time, they're telling U.S. citizens not to go to Haiti because it's too dangerous. When we jump down, it says, and we're going to get the whole article, but I'm just, you know, jumping through just to make this point. It says gang violence has displaced 1.3 million people across Haiti as the local government and international community struggle to contain a spiraling crisis. You know, so that's is bullshit at the end of the day. But let's go back up in the article. It says, you know, and hey, let's get Isaiah chapter 10 real fast. Isaiah chapter 10 verse 1, which says, "Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that write grievousness which they have prescribed, to turn aside the needy from judgment, and to take away the right from the poor of my people, that widows may be their prey, and that they may rob the fatherless." You know, these is unrighteous decrees. This is unjust judgment that Esau is exercising. You know, and because like I mentioned before, you know, this is targeted. This is Esau being able to freely exercise the perpetual hatred that they have against us, as we read in Ezekiel chapter 35. And why do I say that? Because, you know, there's immigrants of all the heathen in this country, of all different nations, and they're rarely being targeted. You rarely see them pop up in the news or in these articles. It is primarily the nation of Israel. Like I mentioned, you have Edomite, you know, immigrants in this country, and we don't hear nothing about them. You know, but let's go back to the article. It says, the termination of temporary protected status, or TPS, applies to 500,000 Haitians who are already living, or Salaki, who are already in the U.S., some of whom have lived here for more than a decade. That's showing the Trump being that cruel Lord. These people been here for over a decade, and he's just, you know, taking their legal status away. You know, this ain't just people who have come here to Haiti recently. This is people who've been here for a long time. And he's just like, nah, you got to go. It says it is coming 3 months after the Trump administration revoked legal protections for thousands of Haitians who arrived legally in the country under a humanitarian parole program, and is part of a series of measures implemented to curb immigration. And what we're seeing is, you know, the devil showing his horns, but also you have, you know, the Edomites, you know, the regular Joe Edomites in this country, you know, those right wingers, they're showing their horns as well, because you see them underneath the comments of, you know, these articles and, you know, these different posts, and they're like, yeah, get those illegals out of here. We don't need them here. They're all for it. They're pushing for it. They're gunning for it. They like this. Why? Because Jake is going down. Jake is going through it and being targeted. And so they're showing their horns, and what a lot of them don't even understand is that they were legally here. Under law, they were allowed to be here, and then they, you know, that just got cut. You know, because Trump has the, you know, he just wants to, you know, he's just exercising, you know, what he wants. You know, so it, you know, it's just showing you know, Esau's horns. You know, but let's read on. It says, recently the U.S. Supreme Court overturned a federal judge's order preventing the administration from revoking the parole program. It says TPS allows people already in the United States to stay and work legally if their homelands are deemed unsafe. Immigrants from 17 countries, including Haiti, Afghanistan, Sudan, and Lebanon, were receiving those protections before President Donald Trump took office for his second term in January. So, you know, we see, you know, other countries, you know, heathen from other countries were under these protections as well. You know, but like we mentioned, this is 500,000 Haitians be talking about. There's a obviously a focus, at hand. But let's read on. It says, President Trump is ending protections and programs for immigrants as part of his mass deportations promises. During his political campaign, he said his administration would scale back the use of TPS, which covered more than 1 million immigrants. His campaign highlighted unfounded claims that Haitians who live and work legally in Springfield, Ohio, as TPS holders were eating their neighbors' pets. So he's pushing a narrative. He's, trying to make Jake look bad, trying to paint them in a certain light, and it's just Esau moving how Esau moved, bro. But this is another reason this is unjust judgment is because you had a lot of people who were under this TPS status that was undergoing the process of being able to stay here legally, of going through the process of for lack of better words, getting their green card. But this status getting revoked means that they don't get to go through that process. They don't get to see their court date. They got to go home at this certain deadline that it says here in this article. It's coming up here soon. It says hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans and some Afghans have been told already that they're losing their TPS status. Let me see. It says some of the Haitians who benefit from TPS have requested asylum or other lawful immigration status that could protect them from deportation, although it is not clear how many could be left without any relief. But the thing is, like I said, they're trying to go through the process of being secured, deeper than just this, TPS status. But a lot of them won't even get to go through their due process. A lot of them won't even get to go through their the process, their rights, so to speak, because Esau ain't really concerned with protecting we're protecting Jake, and it's going to be interesting to see what the public reaction is once this is enacted. Because let's skip down to it. It says temporary protected status for Haitians expires on August 3rd, and the termination will be effective on September 2nd. It's going to be interesting to see how people react to this, because what we seen recently was the protests in LA, and they were getting pretty, riotous, to where Esau sent, the National Guard, sent military members down there. Now, we're seeing glimpses, and seeing different events that are in line with, prophecies we read, like where, let's read 2nd Ezra chapter 15 verse 16, where it says, for there shall be sedition among men and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. This is people, having an uprising against the government. We seen, what's a common thing that's been being pushed by people, the No Kings movement, I believe it's called. Because Trump is going against, due process, the Constitution, the proper steps. He's just doing what he want to do. He's saying this is how we about to do it. This is what's going to happen, and then he's just going forward with it. And you have people that don't like that. Trump's talking about he wants to go for a third term and things, and we ain't seen a third term since George Washington. They say we ain't doing that no more because that's too long for one person to be in office, and Trump just wants to go against that. So that's why people are protesting and coming against him for it. And what we're seeing is light compared to the peak of what these prophecies are going to look like, but they are still glimpses, and there's going to be more things that come to pass that heighten these prophecies. This right here, what we're reading about in this article, could very well be one of those things, because like people were protesting, and the military, the National Guard was sent, they were sent as crowd control, so to speak. But if people get to the point to where the president decides people are too unruly, he can enact the Insurrection Act, to where the military is basically martial law. The military can act as the police. They can make arrests. They can put people to death if they deem fit, and they don't have to answer for it. And no telling if protests and riots could come from what we're reading here. Now let me see. We can read on a little bit more in this article. Actually, I want to read this last part. It says, deporting people back to these conditions is a death sentence for many, stripping them of their fundamental right to safety and dignity, said Tessa Pettit, a Haitian American who is executive director of the Florida Immigration Coalition. Says France Desir, 36, has been in the U.S. since 2022 on asylum, but he says he is concerned by the Trump administration's decision to terminate TPS. It says, you see your friends who used to go to work every day, and suddenly, without being sick or fired, they just can't go anymore. It hits you. Even if it hasn't happened to you yet, you start to worry, what if it's me next? It says, Desir says his asylum court date was set for this year, but the judge rescheduled it for 2028. So, what, and the thing is, Trump has came after the Northern Kingdom. Trump is coming after the Southern Kingdom now with the Levites, but, it's under the guise of cracking down on illegal immigration. It's on the guise of, that front. But Trump has said out of his mouth, I have this article ready from NPR.org. This is from April, where Trump said homegrowns are next. Trump hopes to deport and jail U.S. citizens abroad. Says President Trump says his administration is actively exploring a proposal to detain U.S. citizens and send them to prisons in El Salvador. So when we see that Trump has been primarily targeting, Israelites within these, this crackdown on immigration, who do you think he's targeting when he says that he wants to go after homegrowns? He wants to go after U.S. citizens and deport them abroad. You think he's talking about going after Edomites? He's going after Moabites? No. He's going to be primarily coming after Jake. He's going to be going after niggas. And that's, this is, this is in line with the prophecy that we read about in Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 7, where it says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. Now, the peak of Jacob's trouble, we're going to know when we're in Jacob's trouble, heavy, because it's going to be something that affects each and every one of us Israelites directly, but this is in line with this prophecy as well, because of the crackdown that Esau is having toward Jake, to where you have Jake that's not even illegal immigrants, that's just being, they fit the description of who's being targeted, and they're being snatched up and sent away without due process, unjustly. You've had somebody sent to Guantanamo Bay, and they wasn't supposed to be there, and there was a whole situation because of it. So you think that's the only case? Nah. Esau, this is an excuse for Esau to exercise his perpetual hatred. This is an excuse for Esau to target Jake. And so that's why I say that this is in line with the prophecy that we read here in Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 7. Because when Trump says that homegrowns are next, that is an opportunity for him to, target Jake directly. He doesn't have to have any excuses of immigration, of making sure, of protecting our country's borders. No, he doesn't have to say that. He wants to get to the point where he could just go after Jake, cause he wants to, and it doesn't take much for us to get there. People keep saying, when we read more in this article, people are saying that Trump ain't going to be able to do this because it's against the law, it's not constitutional, but he's already doing things unconstitutionally. So it wouldn't take much for Trump to be able to do this. It don't take much. It just take a false flag event where Esau moves how they operate, order out of chaos, to where he's using martial law to carry out these certain things that he wants to do. It don't take much. But it says El Salvador is already holding hundreds of people in maximum security prison. They were flown from the U.S. in recent weeks after being detained for allegedly lacking legal status or having gang affiliations. Critics say many of those individuals were deported with limited or no due process, some in defiance of court orders by U.S. judges. So he's already doing this. And so what we're seeing, like I mentioned earlier, you got those right wingers. You got, Esau being able to be more proud and vocal, about how they feel about Jake. They on Trump's side, but then you got a lot of people who's against what Trump is doing, and that's why we had the protests and the riots going on. And what we're going to see when we go back to Isaiah chapter 19, verse 2, it says, "And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom." This is the inhabitants of this country fighting against one another for difference in opinion, beliefs, morals. And this is what the prophecy says. These are things that we know are going to take place. Now, this situation that we're reading about here in these articles, it could come from this, it could not. But it's seeming like Trump is going to be the one to push forward prophecy. He has been pushing forward prophecy thus far. We've been moving in the direction of the least of the flock, drawing them out. Trump attacking Iran. We've been moving in the direction of Jacob's trouble, of 2nd Ezra 15, because of these ICE raids and things of the sort. We're seeing things accelerating, and the Lord is using Trump to fulfill his will. And then one more thing I'll say before closing out the video, we have to understand that there's a balance to it. The Lord is the ultimate chess player, because Jacob's trouble is going to be judgment upon the wicked of the nation of Israel. We understand that the Lord is going to be a refuge for those who are seeking him, for those who worship Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai and are walking in righteousness, who are covered by Yahweh Shai. They're going to be protected in the times that we're coming into. But for the wicked of our nation, they're going through it. They're getting sent off, unjustly, and being snatched up and going to be getting sent to concentration camps and being put to death. Why? Because it's going to be judgment from the Lord. But at the same time, it's going to be Esau exercising his perpetual hatred, because that's how the Lord does things. He like I say, is the master chess player, So that's all I really want to get in this article here, just showing, what Trump's next moves are, what he says he plans to do, at least, and this is that cruel Lord, man. Call all Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai for having Trump in office, because he's, prophecy's been moving, and Lord willing, it continues to move. Like I said, we're just going to continue to watch and pray and see what happens in regards to this latest update. We got a couple months before it's official and things start to roll out, so let's continue to watch. Once again, giving all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'arachak, giving double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS, and a salutation unto the elect. Shalom.